This is the newly renovated and refurbished St Pancras Hotel, one of the most spectacular Victorian buildings in London. Would have been well known to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of the legendary Victorian detective Sherlock Holmes. Now there's a new Sherlock Holmes adventure. It's called The House of Silk, and it's been written by one of Britain's best-known contemporary writers, Anthony Horowitz. Horowitz writes television dramas like Poirot, Midsummer Murders and Foyle's War, and books for children like the Alex Rider series about a teenage spy. We came here to the hotel's Gilbert Scott restaurant to meet the author. Anthony Horowitz, you were invited to write this book by the Conan Doyle estate. Why did you say yes?
Because I love Sherlock Holmes. There was no other reason to do it. At first, in fact, I was even quite nervous about taking on the assignment because I didn't want to be accused of just sort of cynical marketing, of jumping on a bandwagon, particularly with Holmes in the cinema at the moment and on television as well. You know, there's a lot of Holmes about. But I love the detective, I love the character, I love the mysteries. I had to do it.
And why do you think they approached you?
I have no real idea, to be honest with you. It might be because of Foyle's War, which is a detective series which is quite grown up and which uses a lot of research set in the Second World War. It may be because of the success of the Alex Rider books and their hope that maybe this book will lead teenagers back into the novels and the short stories of Conan Doyle, which I do hope happens. But I have no real idea.
You mentioned teenagers. Now, who is this book aimed at? Because, without giving too much away, the subject matter is really quite adult.
Well, I think the whole book is quite adult, actually. I mean, you know, the amount of description in it and the sort of psychology of it, the poignancy. It is narrated by a very old Dr. Watson. Who is it aimed at? It's aimed at everybody, really. I mean, it's a book which I hope will have an appeal for kids maybe who have come off Alex Rider and are now looking for adult books to read and who might like to read me. But at the same time, it's for everybody who has read Sherlock Holmes and likes Holmes, and it's for everybody who likes a good mystery and a fast page turner, an airport blockbuster, really.
You tried very hard, I think, to get the voice, a sort of authentic Dr. Watson Conan Doyle voice. How hard was that for you?
Well, it was absolutely critical that the book should feel authentic. That was my first decision, that it was going to be exactly as Doyle wrote it, as if he had written it, that is to say, that it would be narrated by Watson, who of course narrates virtually all the short stories and the 4 novels. It would use 19th century idiom, and it would also break none of the rules. So, for example, there are no guest appearances, Queen Victoria, Jack the Ripper, or Freud, or whoever. There are no sort of added information. There is no added information, love affairs that we don't know about, or secrets of Holmes's youth or his parentage or any of that sort of thing. It really does live within the world of Doyle.
You have a lot of experience writing television whodunits, Foyle's War, Poirot and so on. How relevant is that, do you think, to the business of writing and plotting an historical detective fiction like this?
I think that my experience writing Foyle's War might have helped, much more so than Midsummer Murders, which was really just a bit of fun. Foyle is more measured, more serious, and is more interested in the period. I mean, really, the murders are just an excuse to look at the Second World War, just as in this story I was completely immersed in 19th century London and the society of it and the sort of the atmosphere. So it helped in that sense. Plus, I guess, the pacing. I mean, I think that I'm writing for a very impatient modern audience. When I write television, I'm always aware that if they're not interested after 15 minutes, there'll be an advertising break and they'll go and make coffee and go to bed, and that's it. So I think when I'm writing a book like The House of Silk, I have that same mentality: keep people hooked, keep the surprises coming, make sure they turn the pages.
Now you've done one, would you do another?
No, I'm not going to do another Holmes novel, for certain. In fact, I've already told around what my next book will be, which is going to be set in the 19th century. It's going to be very much in the same milieu. It's possible even that Holmes will make a fleeting appearance across the pages, but it won't be a Holmes mystery. And the reason for that is very simple. I've already spoken to you about the need to avoid this becoming a cynical exercise, and I think a second book might be just that. Worse than that, the second book would only end up being compared to the first, and in all honesty, I'm not sure I could do any better. So it's ridiculous to try and do worse.
Nothing to stop the Conan Doyle estate approaching another writer, though, to do what you've done.
Well, I rather hope in a funny way that they don't. I mean, I'm not so sure that I completely enjoy these sort of sequels, prequels, add-ons and such that keep on appearing with as much hype as they can muster and such. And I feel quite precious about Sherlock Holmes. We've been very nervous to see a novel which I didn't enjoy that somebody did. So part of me hopes they won't, although that said, you're right, they probably will.
Now, you're also, of course, revisiting another very famous fictional character. There's a Tintin film out at the moment, not terribly well received in some quarters. You are writing the sequel, I think.
Well, Tintin has been extremely well received in other quarters, and I was at the premiere last night, and it went down very, very well with a huge capacity audience that were cheering at some of the action sequences, and well they might, because they are bravura. Whatever one may say about the story, the plot, and the liberties that have been taken with the original, the film is visually stunning. I mean, it is quite extraordinary. It is almost like motion capture animation being invented for the first time. And I am indeed writing the second one, which I therefore have a vested interest in plugging the first, I admit. But I have already delivered a story to Steven Spielberg and to Peter Jackson, who are the director and producer on it, and I'm waiting to see what happens. But of course, if the first one isn't a success, there won't be a second.
And what was the appeal of Tintin to you?
Tintin came into my life when I was 8 years old, and I loved him immediately. He was my first completely immersive reading experience. In a funny way, I would say that Holmes might well have been the second or third in the sort of books that completely absorbed me as a young person. I loved the world, the characters, the humour, the adventure, the excitement, the secret passages, the colour. I was in a very horrible boarding school in North London. These books opened a new world to me, and they were an escape. First Tintin and then Holmes. And it's just fantastic to be working on two of the greatest icons in literature more or less at the same time.
You're best known as a television writer and as a writer of books for teenagers. Now, this is a much more adult book. Does this mean that you are no longer going to write books for children, for young people?
Well, I'm currently 100,000 words into a children's book, which is about halfway finished, and it's the end of my Gatekeeper series, which will come out next year. So far from turning my back on children's books, I am still immersed in them, but I think it is fair to say that I see the end of that side of my career in the near future. It's time to move on, time to find new challenges and adventures. You know, writing, I've always said, is a sort of an adventure, and if you don't find new pastures and new challenges, you're going to get bored and tired and dry up. So I am moving in a new direction, yeah.
Anthony Horowitz, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.